Here we go. Q&A number 19. I have a bunch of good questions I'll cycle through for today. As always, keep these coming. I love the ever-evolving new questions. I am intermittent fasting. Can I eat whatever I would like in a feeding time and still make progress? And then can I train while still intermittent fasting? So first off, let's back up a little bit. Intermittent fasting, what is it? It is eating in a shortened, condensed time window. The most popular way to go at this is typically people will do 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating, which simply basically means you're skipping breakfast and maybe a morning snack. So if you're done eating at 8 o'clock at night, you would not eat until noon the next day or later. There's other ways you can fast as well, but intermittent fasting, normally when people are speaking about it, that's what they're talking about. So to the question, can I eat whatever I would like in the feeding time and still make progress? That largely depends on what progress you're looking to accomplish. So if it's fat loss, which is when most people will turn to intermittent fasting, you can absolutely still make progress. The reason that people do see progress in intermittent fasting as it relates to fat loss is if you have a certain amount of calories that you're looking to be at or under to put yourself in a calorie deficit, having a condensed time window in which you can eat makes it a lot easier to consume less calories because you still feel like you can eat normal size meals. But when you omit a meal and probably a snack, all of a sudden you have a greater ability to have bigger meals and you feel like you can eat quite a bit. In terms of can I train while intermittent fasting, you can absolutely train. Here's the caveat, is your performance may go down. One, being in a calorie deficit, training performance may go down a little bit anyways. But I like to have people view training and their eating with training to where you're looking to fuel your performance. So if you're someone that trains like mid-morning, your last meal was at 8, you'd be completely fine. But you might be a little bit more fatigued compared to if you had some carbs before training and you had that energy from that. Will it be a detriment? No, not at all. You can still do it. You could fast 24 hours and still train if you wanted to. But in terms of like peak performance or if I was competing in something, I would absolutely say make sure you're eating prior to training. I've noticed my favorite CrossFit athletes are hopping in an ice bath following training. Is that the best time to ice bath? Actually, no, for the normal person, the lay person. So somebody that's training once a day, or 3 times a week or something like that, basically not 2 sessions in one day. You actually want to train and let your body recover from that and have the normal inflammation response from training. You want to capitalize on that window while your body's working on recovering. If you get in an ice bath or take a cold shower following training, you're going to blunt that kind of hypertrophy response that we're looking for. So if you're looking to build muscle, you're going to want to separate your ice bath or cold exposure away from training. You can do it before training. Or ideally it would be at a different point of the day. So personally, I train usually in the afternoons or evenings. I will do cold immersion if I'm going to do it in the morning. If you train in the morning, basically you want to give a couple of hours. So after lunch would be a great time to do that. The reason that the CrossFit athletes will jump right in though is because they're competing in an event, having a couple hours off maybe, hopping in another event, maybe they have an hour off, hop in another event. So they're looking to blunt that so they're gonna feel more fresh at the next event. So their response is very, very different than somebody who's training once a day or a couple times a week. Let's see here. Thoughts on rebounding box jumps? Fucking don't do it. Is it a little bit faster in things like CrossFit or things where you're competing? It sure is. Unless you're competing at a high level and there's like maybe money on the line or something along those lines, or just like you're competing at a high level, I would absolutely not do rebounding box jumps. Well, rebounding box jumps are you would jump up to the top of the box, land, open your hips, and then jump off, and without stopping or really absorbing using any joint other than your ankles and Achilles, you would then rebound right back up onto the box. the amount of stress and load that puts on ankles and Achilles is just not worth it for me. So I would jump up, step down. The second your second leg comes down, you can go back up. But rebounding box jumps are absolutely a hard no for me. It's just not worth the potential risk of injury. Is an arch on a bench press okay, or should I try to keep my low back pressed into the bench? Very good question. When you bench press or dumbbell chest press or any pressing movement where your back's on the ground or on a bench, you do want a slight arch. You want your hips down and your butt down, but you do want an arch. So the idea is that we want to create stability through your lats, these big guys on the side of your body. The easiest way to do that is to pull your shoulders down towards your hips, which you will feel as you do that. You'll feel your lats engage. Now, as you do that and I'm on the floor, that's naturally going to put myself into an arch position. So as I'm loose and unengaged here, I can have my low back pressed into the ground, but as I set my shoulders and pull down towards my hips and engage my lats, that automatically extends my low back off of the ground. But what that does is that creates an insane amount of stability for my shoulders as I press. So given that, I want to make sure that I am setting my shoulders so they have as much support as they can while they move through their range of motion, and my back is going to help to support that by engaging my lats. Good question. That comes up often. I notice you sometimes do a fast start. So this is a remote client. I notice you sometimes do a fast start or a short but intense conditioning effort before the heavier lifting portion. Why is that? That is to get your nervous system ready. So we have our parasympathetic nervous system. We have our sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is our resting, digesting, when you're sitting on the couch reading, following a big meal, time spent relaxing with family, things like that. Sympathetic is like anything that is upregulating you, getting you feeling like you're ready to fight or run or anything along those lines. As you can imagine, lying reading a book, parasympathetic, getting off the air assault bike, very fucking sympathetic. When you're gonna basically be more online, the more sympathetic you are. So as we're looking, and this is where you'll notice over time, the first set at the same weight feels pretty heavy. But by the time you get to the third, you're like, that's not bad, I can do this. That's because your nervous system caught up to what you're doing. So when I'm encouraging you to lift heavier, or we're doing heavier tempo work or something along those lines, I'll do these faster starts, short but rather intense conditioning efforts as a way to get your nervous system up-regulated, or really you're like, oh, this is the house we live in now. This is why we're doing this. We're getting prepped and we're getting ready to be able to train and hit those good numbers we're looking to hit without needing a bunch of sets leading up to that to get to that place. So that's exactly why we're doing that. Really, really good question. I know during CARS, you mentioned irradiation. What is that? CARS stands for Controlled Articulate Rotations, which is basically taking each individual joint. You have ankle, knee, hip, spine, elbows, wrists, shoulders. And you're putting them through their controlled range of motion. Irradiation just talks about the level of tension you're creating within your body while you go through that circle, that joint circle. So let's just say I'm going to do this shoulder. On a scale, a sliding scale of 5% irradiation, I am just casually moving through. It's easy. I'm not really gating too much out of it, which at times, first thing in the morning, great. You're just trying to move things and take stock of where you're at for that day, kind of show yourself where your range of motion is. If you're going to use it as a training stimulus, you might up the irradiation to 50%. Now I'm grounding through my legs, I'm firing my legs, I can feel my body working. I'm working to the ends of my range of motion, but I'm not really suffering. And then if you take it to 90% irradiation, you'd be squeezing a tennis ball in your hand. You might be squeezing blocks between your legs. You might be having somebody pull or push against you. You might be aggressively holding on to something while going through your range of motion. and the irradiation or the level of tension you're creating is that much higher. So I will often say, like, first thing in the morning, like I'll do cars pretty much every morning. I'm not taking it to that place of 100. I would never do, or 90%. I would never do them. It's a lot to ask for. But I will absolutely just move my joints through their fullest range of motion at like a 30 to 50%. It feels more like I'm giving myself a little self-love and moving in a place where I feel better, but I don't need to suffer. But as I'm like, let's say in between heavy sets of bench or overhead press, I might do a higher radiation shoulder car or scapular car for 1 rep, just so I continue to own my range of motion. And ironically, the more I do that, the better my joints feel, because I'm continuing to teach my nervous system where I am safe to move. So there's enormous benefits to that. But that's the difference. It's called the radiation. It's the level of internal pressure you build while doing cars. When somebody says grip strength, what is that? And then they were mentioning training it. How does one do that? Grip strength just basically refers to your ability to like literally hold on to things. So that could be hanging from a pull-up bar, could be farmer's carries, could be like sandbag carries, like literally just holding things. The best way to train that is that basically. Pull-ups hanging from a pull-up bar, farmer's carries, grabbing 2 heavy weights and just carrying them. All of those are going to be phenomenal way to work on that. High volume kettlebell swings is a great way. Ironically, I did a 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge where you do 500 swings a day for a bunch of days until you hit 10,000 swings. And ironically, the greatest benefit I noticed from that was I was able to get exponentially more pull-ups than I had previously without doing really any pull-ups in between. And that all came down to grip strength. Grip strength is never going to be a weakness, or having a stronger grip is never going to be a weakness. So I would absolutely pursue training that if you don't do things like farmer's carries, pull-ups, things like that. I follow a program with kettlebell swings by going to a gym that they just program and don't teach. They make me really nervous because they never feel good. How can I regress these? One, feel free to ask somebody. I don't know where it is you train, but feel free to ask somebody to teach you or critique you. But if that is unavailable or if they do bother you, I definitely would regress that or just choose a different variation. So if swings are going to bother you, you can go to kettlebell deadlifts or dumbbell deadlifts. You can go to hip bridges or hip thrusts. Hip thrust would be like you elevate your shoulders up onto a bench and do the hip bridge motion. But you got to think a kettlebell swing is a hip hinge, so I'm pulling my hips back and extending forward. So hip bridge, single leg hip bridge, hip thrust, kettlebell deadlift, dumbbell deadlift. All of those are going to be that same exact pattern where basically my torso stays locked in one position, my spine and my lower body stays locked with the exception of a little bit of knee bend. But the mechanism of action here is that I break at the hips. So you can have the exact same stimulus, maybe a little less heart rate, but as far as the musculature working, it's going to be the exact same. And it's something that you'll feel confident in moving, which ultimately is what we're after. Because at the end of the day, getting hurt is going to probably detract from your progress more than trying to hit kettlebell swings and figure them out while in that scenario where things are moving quickly. Last question for today. Talk to me about sunlight in the mornings. What the fuck is low-level sunlight? So as it relates to, let's back up. We all know that sleep is super important. So as you are looking to get into rituals and routines to make sleep better and make it where you can fall asleep easier, wake up easier, a lot of that starts when you do first wake up, and then as we get closer to bedtime and that kind of ultimate wind down period where you start to get back into that sympathetic state, which promotes you falling asleep easily, staying asleep through the night, hitting those deeper REM cycles. And the way that you want to think about that is you need to get low-level sunlight into your eyes early, and ideally not through windows, not through sunglasses, right into your eyes. This is not a me thing, this is becoming a huge thing. So basically, sun comes up above the horizon. That is considered the low angle sun compared to it being above you. And getting that low level sun, as it relates to circadian rhythm, that's gonna tell you like, okay, morning time to get up. That's gonna give you that normal like cortisol response, a little push you towards sympathetic, basically get out of your cave, get ready to go for the day. Conversely, on the other side, sun moves through, we're up. As it's getting down and it's now low angle in the evenings, you want to get that back into your eyes for the reason that that's now signifying like days behind us, time to find shelter, time to get into your cave, we're getting ready to go to bed. You have that parasympathetic starting to take over on the nervous system, putting you back into a place of getting ready and able to sleep well. So when you talk about low angle sunlight, that's exactly what they're talking about there. So I hope that helps. Some really fun new questions that we haven't had yet. Please keep them coming. I really do enjoy doing this with you guys. And if you have any questions that spur off of this or other ones, please just send me an email. Let me know. I will be more than happy to cover them in here.